Welcome back, people. So this is your lesson number 4, which is about integration of your vCenter server with ESXi host. But before we jump into the integrations, let's know about vCenter server. What is it, and what are the basic purpose of this vCenter server? vCenter server is a management layer that we usually use to manage multiple ESXi hosts using single pane of glass or single administrative graphical user interface. vCenter server is not only limited to the graphical user interface. vCenter server can be connected either through the command line interface or through the PowerShell interface, or using API integrations with many third-party custom integrations are also supported. So coming back to the vCenter server, it is an appliance we usually use in order to configure your data center environment, which is holding up multiple ESXi hosts, and these multiple ESXi hosts can go up to 2,500 in number, and these ESXi hosts can be managed through one single interface offered by vCenter server. In the previous versions, when this interface, graphical user interface was introduced, was a version 6. Version 6 was introduced back in around 2017 when vCenter Server Appliance was in its evolution. vCenter Server Appliance come up with the two different web interfaces. One is known as vSphere Web Client, and the other one is known as vSphere Client. vSphere Web Client remained with vCenter Server till version 7. Version 7 just only come up with vSphere Client, not the Web Client. What is the difference in between these two? vSphere Web Client is actually dependent on Adobe Flex plugin. Most of the time, the Adobe Flex plugin has got some conflict with the browser. Because of this, the administrators need to face the unavailability of the graphical user interface. So in vSphere Client, there is no dependency or dependability of the Adobe Flex plugin type or kind of. These dependencies have just eliminated. vSphere Client is a HTML5 browser compatible client, doesn't require any third-party dependencies. You can use it just like you can see on the screen at the moment. You need to provide your username and password, and if you just look into the address bar of your browser, it actually tells you the FQDN of your vCenter server, as you can see here. And this FQDN actually is going to provide you the single sign-on. It's going to provide you the logon page, and here you need to provide your username and password, and you click login. Once you logged into the vSphere Client interface is very simple and comprehensive. You can see on the top it's a black bar. On the top left corner you can see its name, vSphere Client. On the top right corner you see that who is actually logged on, and you can click on the drop down and it's going to pop up with some of the basic information, like you can change the password, you can set up the preferences, you can change the theme from light to the dark mode, and you can log out as well. On the other side, on the bottom, if you just look into, there is a task bar. You click on here on this particular bar, it's going to show you some portion where you can see the actual current tasks which you're going to perform are running there with their progress in this case. Similarly, you can see here that's a taskbar which is empty at the moment, but as soon as you do any activity or perform any activity, it's going to be shown off here, and you're going to see that its progress, either it's 100% completed, in progress, or failed. Click on again this down arrow, it's going to be shortened down or shrink down. Now this is what's called the navigation pane on the left hand side of the interface. So navigation pane come up with 4 tabs, which is the hosts and clusters. Then comes virtual machine and templates. There comes the data stores and the networks or networking. So you see in the host and cluster, you're going to see the ESXi hosts along with the virtual machines, and any cluster if there is any. And the top line object in the navigation pane under the this particular hosting cluster tab is the vCenter server itself. Then comes the data center, which has just got changed its name. Then comes the cluster, and under the cluster you're going to see the number of ESXi hosts with their relevant virtual machines running. Similarly, if you just click on the tab, and that is the VM templates, so you're going to see only the virtual machines which have been classified under different folders. And there could be some templates as well that you're going to see here. And similarly, you're going to see the data stores, which are actually you can see falling under here, and you can do the data store relevant activity. Once you click any object in the navigation pane on the central side, you're going to see the number of different tabs, and the very first tab that comes up while selecting any of the object in the navigation pane is the summary page. The summary tab or the summary page holding up the basic but very relevant information about the selected object in the navigation pane. So you can see here the details of the object. If I just click hosts and clusters and I choose ESXi host, so the summary tab going to give me the information about the ESXi host, its vSphere version number, its number of physical or the logical processors, number of network interface cards, and the installed memory as well. You can also see how many number of CPUs are there, how much of the memory is here, and how much of the storage associated with this ESXi host. You can also see the configurational information in which it's going to talk about whether ESXi host is the part of any cluster, and that cluster is having any vSphere enabled, any fault tolerance configuration, any enhanced vMotion configuration is there, EVC, right? And there are so many other cluster relevant configurational feature sets enabled or disabled or not configured are going to be shown off here. Similarly, you can see the monitor tab. The monitor tab is going to talk about the observations or the events relevant information like logs, like tasks performed, or some other things. Like you can see here the number of events for the selected object. You can see under monitor tab under the tasks and events. How many number of tasks have been performed, whether failed, successfully completed, or in progress, are going to be shown here. Similarly, hardware health statistical information is also the part of it. Skyline is another feature set that is available since vSphere 7. You can say it has just got applied with, but later with the vSphere version 6.7 was also the part of it. So Skyline is a feature set that's going to tell you about the basic configurational changes. Those are not up to the recommendations, but Skyline detailed information always require the customer experience improvement program be enabled, CEIP, that you always require to do the configuration in the general settings. Okay, so this is the general interface there for the vCenter server, and you can actually, most of the time, you're going to interact with a vCenter server using host and clusters navigation pane and into the configure tab, where you are going to do the configuration for the relevant selected tab, whether you choose ESXi host or you choose any virtual machine. So the relevant configuration is going to be different for different objects you have selected. So these are this is the generic or the general introduction to the vCenter server and its interfaces we are talking about. So in case when we talk about the different services that the vCenter server is offering, you can see on the top right corner the 3 lines right behind the vSphere client name. So you click on these 3 lines and you're going to see the administration option here. Under the administration option, you can do the configuration for the vCenter server relevant to the data center administration. Like you can see the number of roles which are falling under the SSO. You can do the licensing stuff by adding licenses, assigning licenses to the ESXi host, and many things. right? You can also configure vCenter Server to connect with the Active Directory domain, right? So in that particular case, you require to go to the configuration that falls under single sign-on. So you click on the configuration, and you're going to see here Active Directory domain in the identity provider. You can see here as there is an already one of the, if there is any domain there, so you're gonna see here, or you can join an Active Directory domain as well. You can define multiple Active Directory domains. One of the domain is already here. You can see here there's a leave domain option, right? Or you can change the identity provider as well. So identity provider, Active Directory itself is considered to be identity provider for vCenter Server. Once you connected with the Active Directory, so all the imported users you're going to see under the users and groups. You need to search for the users by selecting the domain like local DNS, or it could be vSphere.local is the domain that is actually prepared during the installation of the vCenter Server. So vSphere.local or any domain like this is actually prepared during the installation of your vCenter Server, and this is what's known as SSO domain. Keep one thing in mind: SSO domain should not have any kind of conflict with Active Directory domain, because SSO domain is the one that is managed by vCenter Server for its own user authentication authorizations, because vCenter Server got its individual internal VMDIR or its internal directory service system. So its internal directory service system is known as single sign-on domain, should not be conflicted with Active Directory domain system. Having said so, your Active Directory is going to suffer from user authentication authorizations, the same for vCenter Server. So be very careful while designing these things. We're going to talk about all these things one by one, and we're going to look into these things easily in this course. So when we are going to have a deep dive for different particular topics in this particular case. So apart from these things, you can also import, or you can regenerate the certificates if you're using your vCenter Server as the certification authority, so it becomes a VMCA. So you can generate certificates from vCenter Server as well for ESXi hosts, as well as for other VMware product lines as well. So other than that, if you require to check the licenses, so you can check it from the licensing port, right? You can also look into the vCenter Server inventory. You go to inventory and you select the vCenter Server object. You go to configure, and here you're going to see licensing options also here. So you can use either of the way to do the licensing stuff, but here assigning the license has got some limited capabilities. If you want the full capability of the licensing to be taken care by vCenter Server, you always need to go through the administration tab of the administration option. So that's all for the high-level overview of the vCenter Server, guys, and do have a look on the detailed information in the blog. In the blog I have just mentioned its URL in the description. Go for it and have a deep dive for vCenter Server appliance own capability and how the vCenter Server appliance has got multiple different components. Thank you very much for listening to me.